Hi friends, it's Miss A at the Northeast branch of the Reading Public Library. I'm filming this the week before the one you're in now. I just finished putting together a bunch of go packs for you all for today's craft, which is apple scented Play-Doh. So we're going to make Play-Doh that smells and looks like apples. If you're watching this, it means it's Wednesday night. It's time for our family night craft at Northeast. So let's get started. If you haven't already, you have to go to the Northeast branch of the Reading Public Library on 11th and Pike and get a go pack, which will have almost everything you need to make this. So you'll actually need to grab from home some sort of measuring cup, or you can guesstimate, but you're going to need 3/4 cup of water. You'll also need a spoon and some sort of mixing bowl. You could use a cup if you'd like, but I've chosen this bowl and a nice hearty spoon. And then in your go pack should be instructions for today's activity. As always, I put a picture of what our final project will look like and all the instructions you need. Flour, which in each bag I've measured out 1 cup. Salt, which I've measured out to 1/4 cup. A tablespoon of cream of tartar, which I've measured out for you. And this weird cup here is a mixture of 1 tablespoon of coconut oil and a few drops of red food coloring, which will give our Play-Doh the apple looking color. Oops, I almost forgot. Also in your go pack will be some sort of pouch of apple drink. In some it'll be apple spiced tea, and others it's apple cider powder. So this is the first thing that we're going to use along with our water. Now if you read the instructions, they're for apple tea. For apple cider it's a tiny bit different. So apple tea will steep in the boiling water. This apple cider powder, we're just gonna dump in and stir. So the first thing that we're going to do is go boil our water. If you're doing it on a stove, you can measure it out first. So 3/4 cup on here at this little measure. But what I'm going to do, since I'm using an electric kettle, I'm going to boil some water. It's a minimum of 1/2 liter. So I'll boil that and then measure it out in this measuring cup once it's a little bit cooler. Let's go boil water. Alright, so my water's all heated up. I waited for it to cool down a second because if you're pouring into a measure cup, you want to make sure it's not boiling hot water if it's glass, because it could break. Now, if you're a little kid watching this, you might want to have an adult help you boil water, or at least supervise for you. And like I said, with an electric kettle, you could heat 3/4 cup in a microwavable mug or something in the microwave. You could heat it on a stovetop. Either way, we just want to get to have 3/4 cup of boiling water. So I'm going to pour it in. See if we can get 3/4 cup. What does that look like? Almost. I think that looks about right. A little less, but we're going to add it slowly. So I'm going to pour in our apple cider mixture. Take this whole thing and pour it in. If you have a tea bag, just steep it in. But yeah, pour it in, take our spoon and give it a stir. Now I'm going to set it aside while we put the other things together. So if you look at your instructions, the next thing to do is take our flour, salt, cream of tartar, and coconut oil and food dye, and we're going to mix them all together in the bowl. So let's do it now. I'm going to start with flour. That in the bowl. We're putting the whole thing in of each. Flour. Salt. Our cream of tartar. I can get it open. Tough.
6.5 hours later.
Cream of tartar. And last but not least, our coconut oil and food dye. Be careful, I got food dye all over my clothes, clearly all over my hands. You don't know where it's going to be when you open up your cup, so be careful. So I'll pour in the food coloring first. You can see it sitting there. And then sort of take your spoon and scrape out the coconut oil. I swear this will combine. So take this. Now I'm going to stir this up. Be back in a sec. You might have to mush it against the sides because vegetable oil is a little easier if you want to add a tablespoon of that. Coconut oil I put in your packs because it stays solid a little easier, so it's less likely to be a catastrophe in your go pack. But feel free to use a tablespoon of vegetable oil instead of the coconut oil if you want. You might just have to mush the coconut oil against the sides and sort of squish it with your hands to get it to mix a little better. All right, so I've mixed my dry ingredients together. It doesn't really look too red yet, so hopefully when we add the water, it'll look more red. It's still powdery. If you've ever made pastry before, like a pie crust, it might have some little clumps like that from the oil, but otherwise it'll be mostly powdery. But now we're going to slowly add our apple tea or apple cider. So if it's the cider, you don't have anything to remove. It's the tea. Take out the tea bag. But yeah, what we're going to do is pour it in a little bit at a time. So we don't want it to be runny. We want a dough. If you played with Play-Doh, you know the texture we're going for. And we're going to stir it and it's going to be like a sticky dough. So a little at a time, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Let's go. Okay, my arm is tired. As you can see, I didn't use all the 3/4 cup. So the key, little tiny bit by little tiny bit. How much do I have left over? I have almost half a cup left over, a little bit less, so really be careful. But this is what my dough looks like right now. As you can see, it's a little bit sticky. We don't want it to stay that way, but before we get to our next step, so we have this sticky lump that's all together right now. That's what we want to be at, but it's sticky. So we're going to knead it until it's a great texture and it's all together and it is not sticky. But you want to be careful because we did use boiling water to make this. So I would recommend taking your hand near it and feel if there's a lot of like heat coming off of it. We want this to be fairly cool. So sort of poke it with your hand, see if it's hot. You could walk away and do something for a little bit. But what we're gonna do next is we're going to knead the dough. What that'll do is that'll increase the elasticity. It will bring it all together into a ball and it will keep it from being sticky. So to knead something, you basically wanna pick it up and then punch it down with your fist like this. I'm going to start it in the bowl even though it'll be a little harder to see. Because I don't want the table to be really dirty. But you can do the same thing that I'm going to do, which is I'm going to knead it for a little while in the bowl till it's less sticky. Then I'll put it on the table so it'll be easier for you all to see and it won't make it such a huge mess. So let's get kneading. And then I like to slap it together into a ball between my hands. And as you can see, we have some pretty nice Play-Doh. You can break it apart. It has that same texture that Play-Doh has. It's pretty amazing what you can make just at home. It has that crumbliness, but also the stretch. You can break it into balls. I'll break it into, I'd say you have two like apple shapes, apple sizes with the amount that we made. So if you slap it between your fists and cup it, it'll turn into a ball. It's pretty amazing. And that looks like an apple. Of course, I want you to use this Play-Doh to make whatever you want, play around, but we'll make it into two apple shapes to sort of finish it off. And if you smell it, it'll smell like a lovely apple. So there's one. Maybe I used a tiny bit too much water because mine's a little saggy, but yeah. And then there's number 2. Here's our 2 apples. And I have some leaves left over from our fall leaf painting because I'm gross. I'm gonna stick them in and see if it looks like stems. Let me grab them.
A few moments later.
Alright, so these are 2 leaves. You can see I used it from our fall leaf painting. I'm gonna clean up our workspace after this. But the stems of the leaves look sort of like apple stems, so I'm gonna break them off. And you can also look for leaves outside that you think would look like the leaves on apples. But if you stick it right in the middle there, you've got a cute little apple. Look at that. I'm gonna do the same for the other one. Break it off and stick it in our apple. This leaf does not look remotely like an apple leaf, but let's see, it's kind of, it looks a little weird. You could find ones with a better shape and use it. Let me see if I have one. I guess I wasn't gross enough to keep extra ones. This one works. Yeah, stick that in there. And that's all do it, folks. You know, you can take it apart. I've taken the stems out. You can build whatever you want. If you want this to last, you should put it in a sealed Ziploc bag, maybe the one from the flour. You could put it in a jar. I would recommend storing it in a fridge if you want it to last longer. But since this is made out of food, just watch out for any funky smells or weird colors because that'll be time to throw it out. But I think it should last at least a week. Some people online said that it lasted for like 3 months, but I do not recommend using it that long. But yeah, go ahead, have fun. I'll show what I'm gonna make. I'll make an A for Miss A, an A for apple. You can do fun things. Use cookie cutters to play with shapes, roll things into different things. You can use a spoon to carve things. If you want your kids to work on the alphabet, you can work on shaping it together out of different logs you roll. But here's an A for Miss A. Ooh, it's saggy. A for apple. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining me today to make some Play-Doh. And join us next week. We'll be making turkeys. Coffee filter turkeys with tie-dye markers. So it'll be fun. Join us. New video next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. I guess 5:15 by YouTube standards. And don't forget to get your Go Pack for this craft if you haven't already. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.